nature and all of its elements are not God.
If that light is not God, then what is it?
I would say it's your soul.
Sometimes you might find God in the rainforest.
God's mystery is even greater than whatever we discuss here.
Smudging and sage do not detract dark spiritual forces.
You can't just get baptized in the waters and think that your soul is cleansed.
Ihsan is a straight path, but it's not the only path.
Yeah, it's called syncretism, all of this mixing that's happening. New Age has no scientific legitimacy, meaning crystals and frequencies do not have measurable healing properties.
We're trying to kind of separate the spirituality from our practices.
I will say, yes, the source of healing comes from Christ.
Spirituality is what connects with your inner world.
Yeah, I don't need anything outside of me exterior. You need the Bible to hold you in the light and salvation.
We cannot manifest health and wellness. But I don't necessarily think that just visualizing or believing something can manifest a certain reality.
Realism is just as much as you perceive real to be.
If you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you cannot.
You can see it in the small and in the big. Well, of course I deserve this thing. I want this thing.
You cannot find identity in astrology, the Enneagram, Chinese zodiacs, personality test, etc.
I was just having fun with it as like a personality typing thing.
Every single spirituality has an inner dimension.
And so I would just say, like, be careful with this stuff.
Wow, Kalia, so you just debated 20 different women on these really interesting topics. Hi everyone, welcome to the Dr. Daff Show. Today we have one Christian woman having a conversation with 20 New Age and spiritualist women. Kalia came up with her own prompts, so this conversation is going to get interesting. You can take the floor.
Hi, I'm Kalia. My first prompt is nature and all of its elements are not God. And I chose this because I've noticed in New Ageism and spirituality, there tends to be a very high practice of pantheism, believing that God is in and throughout everything. I think that because the world is created, it implies that there's a creator. And so that's why I chose this as my first prompt. Right. And whoever feels strongly can come down.
Anyone who feels strongly about this prompt, come take a seat. Was the intro okay? Can you change it?
Hi guys, I'm Kalia. I am a Christian and I believe that God created the earth in the beginning. In Genesis 1, it talks about how the earth was without void, it was formless, and the Lord came and he brought order to this world. I do believe that the world is beautiful, it's stunning, you can adore the world, but I think when you look at something beautiful, it should always draw your eyes upward, not to a fascination of the thing itself. So that's why I chose this prompt.
Hi, I'm Sunita.
Hi Sunita.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Brianna.
Hi Brianna.
Hi, I'm Denisha.
Hi Denisha.
Hello, I'm Farron.
Hi Farron. Nice to meet you.
This prompt actually reminds me of a song that I grew up with. Spirit of God I will not sing and torture you with that, but I'll just say the words. Spirit of God in the clear running water, blowing to greatness, the trees on the hill. And when I hear that song, I'm really filled with awe and wonder at nature, and do feel that God is there in nature, indeed created it, but the magnificence when you see a sunset or sunrise just fills me with this awe and wonder for the divine. So I would say I do believe that God is in nature. And I wonder what my other women friends think about that.
How exactly, I guess we can get clear on definitions, how would you define God?
Yeah, so I would define God as a superior, all-reigning, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient creator.
Okay, so omnipresent, so it's present amongst all existing things, all elements, all forces. but it is not found. God is not in nature.
So that was actually the distinction I was getting ready to make. So God is omnipresent, meaning he's aware, he's observing all things, but that does not mean that his nature is the same as nature itself. So God, I believe, is omnipresent even in this space right now. The Holy Spirit was given to believers. So I believe the Holy Spirit is here even now. That doesn't mean that I myself am the Holy Spirit. That doesn't mean that you're the Holy Spirit. Doesn't mean that the lights are the Holy Spirit. It means he's here, he's observing, and he's powerful among the environment.
So do you believe that we are all expressions of God?
No, I do not. I believe we are the creation of
So
God.
God is omnipresent and present and moving through all things, but its essence is not flowing through all things. We are not an aspect of that piece, but it's flowing through all of us.
I didn't
Correct?
say that he was flowing through all of us.
But omnipresence,
Did you
what
hear
is-
what I did you
what
hear
is-
what I just said? So he's omnipresent. He's observing all things. He's the ultimate superior creator. So he sees all things. He's sovereign. Nothing happens that God is not aware of. That does not mean that God's nature is the same as humans' nature. It does not mean that God's nature is the same as creation. He's distinct. He's actually other than, and that's what's able to separate him as creator.
Okay, gotcha. But you do believe that God created all things, right? God
Correct.
is the creator. Okay, so we can make an example here of an artist who is painting on a canvas and they create this beautiful masterpiece.
Right.
When you see that, do you not see an essence of their being emanating, breathing through that force? You see, like when you look at that can't be replicated because it's an essence of their soul emanating through the work. And so, how can we say that God's creation is separate? In my eyes, creation is not separate from the creator. It is impossible. It is imbued. Creation is imbued with the creator's touch, with the thumbprint of God. You believe that God is omnipresent amongst all things and the force flows through us all. So, I can't really see any distinction between that we are not expressions of God.
So I think you're conflating again. God being omnipresent does not mean that God is flowing through all things. And I could turn the.
I mean, like you're saying.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Thank you. So I can flip the painter analogy right around on you. When I look at a painting and I say, "Oh wow, that's a beautiful painting," that might be an expression of somebody's mind, will, or emotions. But who's the painter? I now want to find the painter. In the same way that if I see a cake that's beautifully designed, I'm gonna go, who's the baker? If I look at a child, I'm like, oh my gosh, that child is beautiful. That child has all these gifts. I'm gonna look at the child and say, who are your parents? So the point of creation is always to lift the person's eyes upward.
Say something? So we mentioned the omniscient thing. If God is all knowing, then he knows who the creator is. He knows who the parents are. I feel like God is so much all knowing that he knows that all of us won't receive a message in the same channel. So sometimes you might find God at the beach. Sometimes you might find God in the rainforest. It's not up to our human experiences or perspectives to dictate how God speaks to anybody. This is how I feel. So I feel like if God is connecting with you in any way and he's actually connecting to you, that's God. Sometimes the human experience kind of blurs definitions of things, but I do feel like if God is all knowing, then he knows all of what I need to know too. And I'm going to get my messages from him in ways that he knows I can receive them. And if that means just going to the beach and laying down or going to the forest and letting the rain fall, that's between me and God.
So Farron, I don't
I
necessarily.
feel safe. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think that because God has created all things, he uses all things to point back to himself. And so, for instance, like when I'm resting and listening to worship music, that's my way of connecting with God. My dad loves nature. He loves hiking. So when he's hiking, he feels like he's experiencing God in a completely different way. There's a verse in James 1:16. It says, every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father. So meaning experiencing the beach, that's a good and perfect gift from the Father. Experiencing a hike, that's a good and perfect gift from the Father. Experiencing music, that's a good and perfect gift from the Father. But where I think the separation in our worldviews is that you guys stop at the creation and you don't look up to the Father. So when you're laying on the beach, it should be, wow, God, this is beautiful. Let me give you honor and respect because this beach is beautiful and you made it.
For me personally, that's what it is.
That's what it is?
For me personally, yeah.
So I agree with some of the things they're saying, and I feel like you can't have a creation without the creator being in the creation. It can't be separate. Like a mom having a baby, the baby is gonna have that DNA. Not saying the baby's gonna come out exactly like the mom. Not saying if you look at the baby and say, "Oh, you're cute," who's your parents? You can still appreciate the creation. Appreciating the creation is appreciating the creator. It's not separate. I can look at the beach and say, "Wow, God," and God's not gonna be like, I made that. Why you glossing over the beach?" He's not gonna think that. Appreciating that is appreciating Him. And I feel like when we appreciate nature, when we see the reverence in nature, when we see the God in nature, we respect it. Humans kind of have this superiority complex, like, oh, we're better than any other animal. Oh, that dog, who cares about that stray dog? Like stuff like that. Oh, who cares if I litter? Because we don't see the God in everything. We don't really see the reverence in everything. Even little things like that, throwing trash on the ground. You can also, if you're saying what you're saying, you can say that I don't respect God because I littered. He made this and he just threw it on it. So I don't think they're separate. I think two things can be true at once. God can be in everything and you can still appreciate the creation while appreciating the creator.
Are you guys familiar with the concept of Imago Dei? Okay, so Imago Dei means image bearer, and all human beings are endowed with the image of God. We are not God, but we're made in His image. So that's kind of what you're talking about. When people look at us, they can see the Creator, but we ourselves are not the Creator. We're meant to be mirrors to the Creator. The same way that a child, yes, mirrors their parents, but a child still has very distinct DNA. A child has distinct fingerprints. A child is still other than its parents, though it shares some of the attributes with God. So for instance, you guys all look like creative people. Creativity, I would say, is God's thumbprint on you, that you were made in His image. And so again, my whole thing is like, can we give the one who is worthy of glory and honor and respect due? If you guys are familiar with the Christian worldview, God touts over and over again that He is a jealous God. Idolatry, right? This is one of the main 10 commandments. You shall have no other gods before me. And so that's why we make this very distinct line between worshiping a tree or worshiping the beach and worshiping God.
I can't speak for all of us, but I think that to make it clear, we're not saying we are God. We are expressions of God. We are fractals of the infinite. We are peace. You even say we are mirrors. When you look at an individual, you see the universe. And sometimes it can be jarring. It can be hard to look to someone in the eyes because you see a reflection of yourself. You even said it, you see a mirror, because we're all fractals of the one, of the all, of the whole. And, you know, I just can't understand how a creator could be separate from creation, because it requires to be non-dependent. And so, you know, for there to be separation, there must be non-dependence. And creation requires its creator. It's dependent upon it. And there is a recent study that was released that showed that there is actually upon death a light that flickers out upon death. They've released a study, scientists revealing this. If that light is not God, then what is it?
I would say it's your soul. I would say that it's the soul that God has given you. That's what I would say is flickering. And I would also say if God is all of us, then that means that God is also limited. That means that God is disease. That means God is corruption. That means God is a liar. That means God is a thief. That means everything that's bad that exists in the world, God also is, because He's not distinct from His creation.
But I feel like that's a whole nother point of view, only seeing God as good. Everything works in balance.
That's
God
the Christian
is both.
worldview.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
the Christian
right.
worldview. Everything works in balance. God is not good or evil. He's everything. And nothing is good or evil until you perceive it.
Until free will comes
is what
in.
it is. Yes.
That's when it gets weird. Free will, the
Yes.
human's curiosity, the free will of danger. Why is danger thrilling? The free will of curiosity. It gets deep.
I appreciate
It's
what
deep.
you're saying, because I do think when I see the magnificence of nature, I see the divine hand behind this. Because I know that God, the divine, is much more than nature. And we as humans may be limited in understanding that divinity, but we understand the divinity in its infinitesimal form, small form, through nature. Because God is really much more than that, much more.
Amen.
Yeah, and sometimes we are humans in a we are in our incarnate form. So the sensorial engagement with nature helps us understand God. helps us have a relationship with God, our sensorial, because we are still, carnate, flesh. And the senses then are engaged with nature. And of course, nature also nourishes us. I'd like to think of something else, though. Disease is part of nature. And I feel sad when people say, why did God do this to me? Because God is nature, supposed to be, right? I don't subscribe to that either. I don't think God had anything to do with one's cancer. I think nature did it. Nature's really will do it for everybody. It doesn't matter how good you are, how bad you are, what your relationship to God is. Nature gave you cancer. And would I say that was God's hand? I wouldn't. I would say it was nature. So I appreciate what you're saying about the division, the separation. But it's still, again, because we are limited, God's mystery is even greater than whatever we discuss here, I feel. So I just had to add that thing about nature and disease because it's like it's been on my it's been on my mind a lot.
I was just gonna say to that, I do agree with some of what you said. I believe that disease is actually a consequence of the fall of man. So when sin entered the world, when human beings were defiant and disobedient to God, then that introduced a swarm of disease, sin, pain, hurt, brokenness. And so I would also distinguish that from God. I would say that we're all submitted to this broken world, and so then we have to incur with it the fallenness that comes with it, including disease.
Well, I was just saying that I guess you most closely define like the way to God through a man, through Jesus, correct? And I would see that God is rightfully be reflected in its infinite nature, not in a man. How could all of creation be reflected in a singular man rather than all of creation itself? You say the Father, you say God is omnipresent and of all things connected, but you refer to God, the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Where's the mother? You forget all of creation. It's God is only the man, the Father. We submit to the Father, God.
So Jesus is not just a man. He's the man God. He's the incarnation of God. Also, no, God represents himself in the masculine. That doesn't mean that he is biologically a male, that he has male anatomy, but that's how he chooses to define himself. And so we respect the way he chooses to define himself, but he has all attributes within himself. Thank you, guys. Praise the Lord.
Starting Find Forever wasn't some big confident business move. It was actually the opposite. I remember sitting there with this idea for a fragrance line that really meant something to me and feeling completely unqualified to bring it to life. I am not a business person. I didn't go to school for this. I didn't know how to build a website, how to process payments, how to handle shipping. I didn't even know where to begin. And honestly, that almost stopped me. I kept thinking, what if I mess this up? What if I waste money? What if nobody buys it? But at some point I realized if I keep waiting until I feel ready, I'm never going to start. So I took a leap with Find Forever, and I had to figure things out as I went. And one of the biggest tools that made that possible for me was Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and literally powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Whether you're just starting or already growing, it gives you everything you need in one place. You can build a beautiful online store with hundreds of ready-to-use templates that match your brand. Suddenly, Find Forever looked like a real brand, not just an idea in my head. And it doesn't stop there. Shopify has a built-in AI tool that helps you write product descriptions, improve your photos, and make your store look professional without needing a full team. Plus, getting customers, that's huge. Shopify helps you run email and social media campaigns so that people can actually discover your brand. Because let's be honest, having a great product means nothing if no one sees it. Shopify helped me actually reach people. And one of my favorite parts, it handles everything: inventory, payments, analytics, all in one place. No jumping between 5 different platforms trying to figure it all out. I remember the first time I got a sale, that cha-ching moment. It hits different when you know where you started. So if you're like me, sitting on an idea, feeling like you don't know enough or you're not that type of person to start a business, just know neither was I. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to start and have the right tools to support you along the way. So if you're sitting on an idea like I was, feeling unqualified, overwhelmed, or unsure about where to even begin, just know you don't have to have it all figured out to start. It's time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/DAF. Go to shopify.com/DAF. That's shopify.com/DAF. Cha-ching!
Smudging and sage do not detract dark spiritual forces.
Hi, I'm Amber.
Hi.
Hello, my name is Day.
Hi.
I'm Miriam. Thank you for having us.
Hi, Kalia. I'm Samira.
The prompt is smudging and sage do not detract dark spiritual forces. So I chose this prompt because I find that there is a lot of inconsistency in how people even approach smudging, what kind of herbs they use. Some indigenous groups think some herbs are bad and others are good. And so I think that because of the lack of consistency, it's hard to pinpoint a spiritual outcome.
I actually agree with your point there because I'm part Native American, and that is something that I did run into that I really was annoyed by was not only the inconsistencies between the herbs that people are trying to do to smudge and cleanse, also the it's actually, I love that you brought up earlier about your OCD and the intrusive thoughts because that's something I struggled with growing up, and I've had to be in and out of the mental hospitals. And actually when I came out of the mental hospital this last time, I cleared out all of my sage, I cleared out all of my incense candles, and I cleared out all of that because I was realizing I was just trying to use that as like a caveat, as an external way of cleansing, like as a 3D thing, without understanding there was still more inner work that I had to do. And that's what I felt like God was showing me when I was in the mental hospital. And what was actually to my disposable for reading material was the Bible. So I was going deep in there, and in that was no false idols, no putting up anything to false gods, falsehoods, and anything like that. And I really felt God was speaking to me in my spirit. And I was like, yeah, because if we truly believe in God's power, what makes us think we need this external herb and this external source to cleanse? Do we not think that God's power is enough to cleanse us in the power of prayer? Wow. So that's why I really was happy I got this prompt, because I did agree with you on that spiritual front, because I think a lot of spiritual people use sage and Palo Santo and incense as a cover up to think that will just wash away all their sins. And I've seen the same thing with baptisms as well. You can't just get baptized in the waters and think that your soul is cleansed. There's actual inner work we need to do.
Sanctification.
Yes.
Yeah. Praise the Lord. Praise God.
I'm pretty like 50. Oh.
You sure? Okay. So I think that I'm very cautious denying anything because we know that, across spiritualities, there's been over 124,000 people sent to every nation and tribe. And even to this day, there are friends of the Most High and the Divine. And so we have to be careful whenever we deny things, because one of those people, Moses, did that. He said, I have the most knowledge, and then he was shown someone who had more. And we know when he first heard God's voice, it was from what? A burning bush, right? Mm-hmm. And like, I'm Native American. I have Native American heritage. We might be cousins because we're both Choctaw heritage. And so I think it's interesting you even brought up in the indigenous cultures, because I do believe that there's validity to angels loving high sense, and angels are what? Just light, like high vibration. It's not just about the outer, like the sage itself, the Palo Santo itself, the Bible itself. Like there's an inner and outer reality to everything. And so you can't have one without the other. You can't have the masculine without the feminine. And I think that Palo Santo is said to actually, like sage just wipes out all the energy, whereas Palo Santo actually invites in the good. And it's just like light. Like you don't try to fight the darkness, you just turn on the lights. So I do think that there is some validity. It's a mind-body connection that is scientifically proven with these high sense cleanliness is next to godliness, right? Like all of these things resonate. And at the same time, like feelings are a force. Like it's not just thoughts or become things, but feelings are a force as well. So you can have all the sage and all the good smells you want, but if, you know, you have these negative energies or like toxic like patterns that are still ingrained, you haven't done the inner work like you were saying, I think that can also affect it, and it's generational. So we'll just end with one like anecdote. Like I think that at the end, like there's two opinions. Like it can either be that we're all born with like a neutral slate, or we're all born inclined towards good, right? And what, you know, so anyways, without going too much into a tangent, my family name, my grandmother's name is Hamdi. My grandmother was raised Baptist. She became Jehovah's Witness over time, and then my grandfather went with the Nation of Islam. So they had their little debates and whatnot, and she ended up becoming going down with the Nation. And then my mother was raised with W.D. Muhammad's community, and here I am attracted to this space because I saw my seminary sister on one of your shows as well, Naya. So I've done a lot of inner, like I've experienced some things, right? Like there's the knowledge that's like from the books, and there's experiential knowledge. And they say that spirit, like religion is for those who want to avoid hell, and spirituality is for those who have been through it. And I think that we need both again. But where I'm coming from with the Hamdi family name is that my grandmother changed her name when she became Muslim to Shakir. And that means the one who practices gratitude, right? Or one who's grateful. And it was like within like maybe 10 years ago, like 5 years ago, when I was having these, like basically being a born again person in my own way, that I realized that she changed her name to exactly what our family name already was, which is Hamdi. Like Hamdi is Egyptian for one who is thankful and grateful. And they have Native American roots. So I believe that Ihsan is a straight path, but it's not the only path. And I think that there are many paths and ways. And if you want to do sage, you want to do Palo Santo, you never know. God works in mysterious ways.
Okay, so I would say one thing that I noticed, not just from you, but while other people were talking to, is again, there's like this kind of appropriation of Christian language. And I think that we have to be distinct because the God of the Bible is very clear about idolatry, right? You brought up Moses, the law of Moses, 10 commandments, thou shalt have no other gods before me, for I am a jealous God. And so when we rely on things like sage or Palo Santo or other herbs to get rid of dark demonic forces, rather than going to the person who has sovereign authority over those wills, we're actually inviting them in. And as I was doing research, I found that many people who smudge and use sage talk about how you have to do it in a precise way, because if you don't do it precisely, you can actually trap spirits or negative demons or thoughts into your home. And so this is why I said it does not detract dark spiritual forces, because inherently it does not. You do it one wrong way and it's actually inviting them in. And so my commission is like, instead of using things that can invite darkness, why not go to the person who completely eradicated it?
Amen.
To answer the question, I think it depends on the intention. I don't think that sage gets rid of all spirits, all negative forces. I think there's variance. And also when it comes to when you said that you use sage to instead of, relying on God, do you think that there is a chain of command when it comes to what spiritual energy that you attune yourself to or ask, for assistance in that sort of stuff? Like,
Do you mean like taking steps?
no, like the Holy Spirit, then Jesus, then maybe even an ancestor, and then God. Do you think that there's like a chain of command? Do you agree with that exactly?
No, because the Trinity is co-eternal and co-equal. So when I'm talking to the Holy Spirit, Jesus and God, Jesus and the Father are aware of that exchange. They're all co-eternal, co-equal, and living within one another. So no, I don't think there's a chain of command. And because I have access to the supreme authority, there's no reason for me to go to creation for authority. There's no reason for me to go to an ancestor for authority, because I have access to the one who created it all.
Because their hierarchies are man-made. We made up hierarchies, but in God and the Spirit and everything, it's all one, like the Trinity. So that's one thing that I really wanted to come on here and speak with too, because I grew up Catholic and around Christians as well. And one thing I agree with is the misappropriation of mixing in everything, all trying to all trying to heal and all trying to be with light. But at the end of the day, there are tricksters here. There is darkness here at the end of the day. And us trying to think that we can cleanse and we can do it all, we just can't, because we are still faulty as man. And at the end of the day, I think we are better having God step in when it comes to cleansing, instead of thinking we can just take it upon ourselves and on our vessels to let herbs do it.
Yeah, it's called syncretism, all of this mixing that's happening. So when you see African spirituality and Hinduism and Buddhism and a little bit of Christianity and a little bit of Catholicism, that's what we call syncretism, because people are trying to pull from all of these different ideologies to create truth rather than finding the objective truth, right? Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is the one truth? What is the objective truth?
Could it also be like a state of mind too? Because kind of a bit of piece of what everyone else said. You can sage and smudge all day long, but if you're not right in the mind, you could let in and let out anything or keep things that are already there, forces or whatever that are still there, even if you like sage and try to get rid of something bad. It could be something bad that was already there and you're just igniting it.
Yeah, maybe so. And so again, that's why I would make the difference and distinction between creation and creator, because like I shared a little bit earlier with my OCD, I had negative thoughts, I had intrusive thoughts, I had things that made me feel like I wasn't a good person, which inherently we're not, we're all sinful, but things that really made me feel evil on the inside. And God, because I ran to the throne room, he didn't ignite those thoughts. He actually extinguished them. And so that's the difference between a God who is good, not a God who is both good and evil, and a God who's dual, and a God who allows bad things and good things because he likes bad and good. No, the difference between a God who is distinct from his creation and a God who is good is that when you bring all of your muck and mire to him, he actually cleanses it. Versus when you're smudging and you have negative thoughts and negative ideas in your household and they can stay. It's because that smudge doesn't have authority. It doesn't have power. It doesn't have dominion. But God, Jesus Christ, King of Kings, sitting at the top of the universe, he absolutely does.
It's like having a mop and constantly dunking your mop into dirty water and then wiping the floor over with a dirty mop over and over again, thinking you're going to clean your room when you really need to go to God and have him change that water out completely.
But saging is just one part. Who's to say that a prayer isn't said while you're saging? You know?
Right, but that's syncretism. That's what we just talked about. So now you're pulling in other beliefs and other ideologies that actually have demonic connotation, which we just went over because they can invite demonic spirits in.
Only if
You're
you don't
mixing that.
Only if you
Right,
don't
but there's
properly
no way to
renovate
there's
your
no
space.
that is an insanely high standard to have of a person, because we're all human, we're all flawed, we're all broken. And so if there's something that I'm wrestling through, I should be able to wrestle with that in the presence of God without the fear of inviting other stuff into it.
Wasn't there frankincense and myrrh? And I mean, I saw a car that says, do you follow Jesus this closely? Because Marianne Williamson had it right when she came up with the book, The Mystic Jesus. Like, all religions come from one, all paths, all spiritualities point to the one truth. And yes, I believe in objectivity, but I think the more you acknowledge your subjectivities, the more objective you become. In the literal sense, you become the objective. So it's called asymptotic objectivity and hermeneutics, okay? Interpreting, the science of interpreting. Because we see everything, even the text, through a lens and a perspective. And again, the more aware we become of that, the more objective we literally become.
New Age has no scientific legitimacy, meaning crystals and frequencies do not have measurable healing properties.
Hi, I'm Kayla. Sorry, oh my God. Middle name. I'm Viviana.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Naima.
New Age has no scientific legitimacy, meaning crystals and healing frequencies have no measurable properties. And I picked this statement because a little bit of what I talked about earlier, I do think that there's a lot of pseudoscience represented by New Agers and spiritual people that the scientific community would not affirm. And so I just kind of wanted to hear your guys' rebuttals to that. What is the science? And then go from there.
I can start off. So I am a yoga instructor personally. So my New Age practice is rooted in yoga. And in yoga, the main practice that we do on the West is an asana practice. Asana meaning posture. Asanas are, downward dog, child's pose. And it's a form of exercise. And we know that exercise has scientific legitimacy in helping improve our bodies. So I can't speak on smudging and crystals and those practices, but I know for a fact that my New Age practice of yoga does in fact have scientific validity in helping our bodies.
How would you say that the benefits that come from yoga are distinct from somebody who stretches on a daily and is reaping healing benefits from that as well?
Well, that is yoga. Stretching on a
Right.
daily basis is yoga. That is an asana practice.
Right. So
Right? Sadhana is the daily practice of asana, which is stretching and postures. So if someone is stretching every day, they are participating in that yogic practice. Whether or not they want to call it that is really up to them, but that is the practice.
So you don't think people stretch daily outside of a yoga practice? Like when you get out of bed and you stretch in the morning, that's inherently connected to yoga?
Well, no, stretching your arms in the morning is not yoga, but participating in an exercise, a formatted exercise of stretching, utilizing the same stretching that yoga does,
Yeah.
is an asana practice. And even if someone is not doing yoga, both things can be true, right? Like stretching in a non-yogic practice can be healing for the body.
Right.
Stretching in a yogic practice can be healing for the body. They are both forms of exercise and they are both healing. But the point that I am trying to make is that yoga, regardless of other forms of exercise, individual to itself, does have scientific validity as a healing process.
Because of the stretching piece.
Well, because both stretching and it's also slowing your cortisol levels, slowing your heart rate down. A big part of asana practice is control of the breath, right? So by engaging in pranayama, which is breath work and breathing exercises, you're lowering your heart rate, right? So it's not only a mental benefit, but it's a physical benefit as well. It also benefits our posture, right? For those who are suffering with chronic illnesses like arthritis, joint diseases, it can help with all of those things. So, and like a lot of this information I'm giving you is from the National Library of Medicine, Johns Hopkins University. So yoga, and they've done studies on yoga specifically as a practice.
Yeah.
Yoga has healing benefits. It does have scientific legitimacy. It's
Yeah.
proven.
No, I don't doubt that. I guess I'm just saying I don't think that that's distinct from any other form of exercise, honestly.
But your claim is that New Age has no scientific healing practices, and I just gave you a practice in New Age that does have scientific.
Yeah, and I would say that the science is connected to the movement of the body, not the religious or spiritual element of yoga. But I also want to talk about rocks and crystals and frequencies because that's what I brought up as well.
Yeah, I can talk about frequencies, but more so in the aspect of music, because I think when a lot of people, spiritual people specifically, are talking about frequency, you're really talking about how that sound is connecting to you and where you're feeling it in your body. Earlier, you brought up that you feel most connected to God when you are listening to worship music, right? That music has a certain frequency, it has a certain vibration that you feel when you're listening to it. It brings a sense of something into you, whether that's happiness, gratefulness, whatever you connect to it. But you can also say the same thing, right? I've heard people say, don't go to clubs, don't go to bars because there's demonic entities there, or the presence there is evil. And some people connect that to the music, and music is a frequency.
I see what you're saying. I definitely want to affirm like music therapy. I know some incredible music therapists that, they play for kids in the hospital that are sick, and I think that's a beautiful practice. And I do think that music heals. If you guys are familiar with the story of David and Saul, when David is serving under the horrific leadership of Saul, he plays for him, and that playing actually helps to calm his mind. So I definitely think that God has given us music, and especially worship music, as a way to connect to him. I would say that has more to do with the Spirit of God. I would say that has more to do with the words that are actually being said, the meditative words that are being said, versus like a specific frequency. There was a study done by the Scientific Journal of Otolaryngology. So these are like ear, nose, throat people. And they did a study where they played ocean waves for one group of people. And then they played ocean waves with binaural beats and a frequency of 8 hertz for another people to see if their symptoms would reduce over the course of 2 weeks. The symptoms reduced, but it was equal across the board. So they both reported feeling better, and no more for the people who had their frequencies. And so my argument would just be like, there's no measure to say that frequencies provide additional healing than things like music therapy or stretching already do.
Well, I don't think the Spirit of God is the frequency. It's not separate. The Spirit of God is the frequency. And I believe I also was thinking of the point of music as well. When I have like some certification in sound healing, and so I use like singing bowls, and that's sort of an attunement and a frequency and a sort of music. And it's all about like entrainment and how the frequencies can synchronize with one another when there's a tune playing. If you go to a concert, you feel the web, the interconnected web of us all. There's an energy about itself because we're all buzzing at the same frequency. Our hearts are actually in training together as one, unifying. And so, when we see these healing frequencies are it's not like just isolated to New Age. It's just a collective whole. Like energies can heal and frequencies are healing. It's not necessarily just like a New Age
Yeah,
thing.
but when frequencies have been measured to have an impact, they don't have any more of an impact than doing other healing like practices.
I just want to
exercising or
know
listening to music.
we've now given you multiple examples of New Age practices that do have scientific legitimacy in healing and helping heal. And every time we have done that, you've kind of taken the spirituality out of our practice and said, oh, well, it's just the stretching. It's not the spirituality in the music, it's just the sound. It's not the spirituality in yoga, it's just the stretching. And I don't really think that's a fair characterization of our practices. There have been studies done comparing the practice. There was a study that was done in 2019 on thousands of 5-year-olds in schools. There was a study done comparing 5-year-olds who were just doing regular PE, regular exercise, versus 5-year-olds who were doing yoga, specifically the practice of yoga. And they found that the 5-year-olds who were doing yoga specifically were significantly more attentive in class and had significantly less issues focusing. So I think that you're trying to kind of separate the spirituality from our practices to debunk the fact that these practices are scientifically legitimate in healing when that is not true. And there have been studies to test what you're saying, and they found that including the spirituality in these practices does have an added benefit.
Yeah, so what I would say is that New Age, again, appropriates things. So I would say arguing for the healing that comes from frequencies is actually an appropriation of the fact that sound therapy, music therapy works, that music heals people. Or I would say saying that yoga specifically heals people is an appropriation of the fact that moving your body heals people, that getting sunlight heals people, that listening to music heals people, that being in community heals people.
But we're not saying that.
So I would say you're appropriating those very like human practices that people have been practicing for centuries for health and wellness, and then making them a New Age thing. And I'm saying there's no science to the New Age part.
No, but I'm saying that there is. I just gave you a scientific example showing that the specific practice of yoga is helping children with attentiveness in schools in comparison to just.
I mean, that makes sense to me because PE for elementary schoolers is usually is chaos. It's throwing a dodgeball. So I could see how being in a room, slowed down, breathing and stretching would help the behavior of children. Again, I would not say that that's specific to yoga. I would say if you took 20, if you took 20, right. So but I'm saying if they did this same study with 20 kids and put them in a room and just had them do random stretches and take deep breaths, I would argue that
well,
it would
until
probably
you cite
be
that
a similar
study,
result.
you are arguing on a hypothetical when I'm arguing from.
Yeah, but it's the
scientific
logical
evidence.
reasoning.
It's
It's
the-
the logical
well, it's-
reasoning of separating.
But you don't
kids.
have the
It's
evidence
the
to-
logical
behind your
reasoning of separating kids from a hyperactive environment and putting them in a slow down.
When you were talking about the sunlight, one thing that I try to incorporate in my spiritual practices, because I do have that background of the Catholicism and the Christianity and growing up here in California around other religions and trying to stay open, is also integrating scientific principles into my beliefs, because a lot of spiritual stuff, when it gets into that woo-woo, a lot of it is placebo.
Yes.
It really is. And when we get into crystals and we get into that kind of stuff, yes, it's really cool for feng shui and stuff. But one thing, growing up in California, I grew up, and one of the show and tells we had in elementary school, I remember a rocks and minerals specialist coming in. He was one of the fathers who would go and do deep dive cave explorations and etc. So my fascination with the rocks and minerals comes more from the agregorical side of things, of us being here on Earth and needing to be around tactile things of the earth. Not that there is some magical, energetic principle, but in the terms of we live in a world where we are constantly surrounded by buildings. We are living, and we can bring up what she was just talking about, moving the children from a chaotic environment to the yoga. It's because at the end of the day, we need to still hold into account that it's not that there is some magic, but actually spirituality and science go more hand in hand, because all that is going to fuel this quote unquote healing, and all that's going to fuel the children's attention spans and stuff like that, is getting out in sunlight. These are grounded principles that you can find in science.
Yeah.
That spirituality needs to start integrating more scientific principles, because science will actually help explain more of what's going on that spiritual level, instead of just saying take your crystals and all of a sudden all your things will be good. Because even if you go into learning about certain crystals that are out there, some of them actually need to be in the sun because it's still a mineral. And if you think you just having this crystal will help you, no, because you actually have to do certain things for that rock, that mineral, to help you feel grounded. But it's
Yeah.
not magic, it's not anything. It's really just being human, and that we're a part of this earth, and you like things that will help you stay grounded.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that spirituality and science piece, again, is kind of what I was saying with creation and creator. Like, God has created beautiful things on this earth for us to interact with and engage with and to look at. But ultimately, they should draw our eyes upward back to Him. And then I was going to say about crystals, too. We actually had the opportunity to do an episode with scientists, and I did not get to ask them on camera. I so wish I did. But there was an actual geologist here, so who studies rock formations, and I asked her off camera. I was like, hey, tell me what's up with the rocks. Are there frequencies in the crystals? Do they heal people? And she was like, no, they do not. And she wasn't an atheist. She wasn't a complete unbeliever. She wasn't a Christian. So she was kind of in this space, in this new agey space. But as a geologist and somebody who takes time to study these things, she's like, no, the rocks don't have any kind of additional healing frequencies to them. So I think that's worthy
Well,
of
the
saying.
truth is all source of healing comes within, because the light is within. So I don't even necessarily, I don't have crystals around, but I profess to like the side of spirituality. I don't need anything outside of me exterior. You need the Bible to hold you in the light and salvation. There's nothing outside of me that I needed. The light is within. And I pose a question for you. Do you believe that the source of all healing comes from Jesus Christ?
Do I believe that the source of all healing comes from Jesus Christ? Yeah, I believe all healing comes from the Lord.
And so could we say you're appropriating? Because where's your scientific evidence of that?
Where's my scientific evidence of the Lord healing?
Of Jesus Christ being the healer? Where's the scientific evidence?
So do I need the scientific evidence? Because I'm
Do we?
communicating a Christian
Well,
worldview.
you're trying to debunk
Well,
our
you guys,
belief on a
this
scientific
was the
basis,
prompt
so
I
why don't
We
prepared.
don't have any scientific proof
Okay,
or evidence
yeah,
on
this
our
is-
end of crystals
do
healing
have
people.
science.
So I would say you guys are shifting the burden of proof. You guys are the ones who make the argument that there is scientific legitimacy to your claims. Now, I would say that there's tons of scientific legitimacy to the Bible, to the scriptures, to Jesus. There are 500 eyewitnesses of his resurrection. I would say that the Bible was written over the course of 1,600 years with 40 plus authors, and there's incredible consistency without. I would say that in the 1940s, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, where there was an Isaiah scroll with over 90% accuracy to the book of Isaiah that we have in the Bible. So we can get into the science and archaeology of Christianity, but I will say, yes, the source of healing comes from Christ. How can I say that? Because Jesus resurrected. That's literally his story. That he conquered and defeated death and rose again on the third
Can
day.
I just say one last thing? So stretching, we're simply saying that is there scientific evidence that stretching is healthy and healing to you?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's all we're saying here.
Your claim is that. Do you mind reading it again for us one more time?
Do you need me to read it for you again?
Yes. Can you read your claim
Okay.
one more time? I don't want to miss.
New Age has no scientific legitimacy, meaning crystals and healing frequencies do not have measurable healing properties.
Okay, so your claim is that New Age has no scientific legitimacy. In the first 5 minutes of this conversation, I cited multiple studies showing you how a New Age practice has scientific legitimacy. Because you decided to group all New Age practices as a monolith, once your immediate claim was debunked with actual scientific evidence, you tried to say, oh, well, that's not because it's yoga as a spiritual practice, that's because it's stretching. When we know that both can be true. Both yoga and non-yogic stretching can have healing properties. But at the end of the day, I have now proven to you scientifically that yoga, a new age practice, has legitimate healing properties. So I think that you should concede on this point because the point has been proven now multiple times.
Yeah, so you cited one study, which
I
was that
cited
one
multiple
with the
studies.
5-year-olds in the classroom. That was the most specific one you cited.
I cited
And
Johns
I would-
Hopkins. I
and-
cited the National Library of Medicine.
And what were
That's
those specific?
multiple
Okay,
studies.
and so my argument is that there was noticeable change because the children were in a less chaotic environment.
Well, maybe you should read the study before trying to comment.
I will, but
on
you
the
brought it
nature of
up,
the
and so
study.
I can respond to it. I have the right. I have the mental faculties to respond to what I'm hearing.
But you're
don't
judging the
criticize
nature of
my
a
ability
PE
to
class that you weren't
respond.
there for.
Right, but I've also been a kid in PE, and I know children in PE.
But not
and I know
every
that
PE class is the same.
I know
You're
that PE is
overgeneralizing.
typically a chaotic environment, and so it makes sense to me that if you move kids into a more controlled, quieter space, there's probably going to be mood differences. That makes sense to me. I'm not willing to attribute that to yoga specifically because yoga draws on stretching, which is just body movement, and I believe that body movement, like Brianna said, does lead to healthy outcomes and benefits in the same way that music therapy does.
So something that you said was that the practices that we cited, like yoga and music therapy, these are things that have been practiced for thousands of years, right? A lot of things that have been practiced were spiritual before they were science. A lot of times science comes along and explains the healing of music therapy.
Right.
It explains the healing of yoga, but these things started spiritually because I think spirituality is what connects with your inner world, not necessarily the outer world. And that's where I think science comes in to explain those things. So yeah, it's easy for you to say, okay, well, these things are science, but they weren't always. Before, you could only describe being as a part of a drum circle and feeling that high as a spiritual experience. You couldn't always describe it as a scientific one, but
Right.
now we can. And I think we have to acknowledge that before just saying, okay, but it's because it's stretching. Okay, it's because it's music. There is an inner world that you can't tell somebody what their experience is in feeling those frequencies and doing those yoga stretches. And yeah, you can put kids in a room and calm them down, sure, but a yoga environment is different than just telling kids to bend over and touch their toes. Chances are they're not going to listen to you. If you're in a yoga environment, there's music, things are very calm, the lights are dim, there's mats, the teacher is calm also, because I think that's a big part of it.
Yes, and I've taught yoga to children. I've also taught non-yogic exercise to children. And the aspect of spirituality is what is helping them focus. The music that is spiritual to yoga, that is what is helping these children focus. That is what is calming.
Okay, so I would say, like I've kind of been saying, there are things in this world that God has created for us to enjoy and experience and that help us. That includes music, that includes the ability to move our bodies, that includes song, that includes dance. So I can concede that those are spiritual things, but I would say that those are spiritual things that God instituted, not spiritual things that multiple gods instituted, not things that Hinduism instituted, not things that New Age instituted, but these are spiritual practices that were instituted at the formation of mankind by God.
I would say we just have different definitions of God. God is the all,
Yeah.
the one. It's not multiple. It's not like multiple gods. It's one God, the all. But I just want to end on a quick anecdote. Like, I was diagnosed with autoimmunity at 11 years old. I have Sjogren's, I have Graves' disease, and fibromyalgia. All of which, if I went to go to a rheumatologist, they want to put me on tons of prescriptions and all the things. I am true, like, living proof of how these practices can actually work internally to heal. I practice yoga, I practice meditation, holistic healing. You know, everything that the brand that I have is involving all of these practices and helping to heal others. And so I apply these practices to actually heal myself and have proven to myself the way that they actually scientifically have helped to heal me.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm not anti-holistic healing. I think Big Pharma is horrible, but I would say I am anti-idolatry, and that's what I think this is.
Thank you guys so much.
You cannot manifest health and wellness.
Hi, Kalia. My name is Bree. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hey, Kalia. My name is Ace. Nice to meet you.
Hi. You cannot manifest health and wellness. So I chose this prompt because I do think that there's some validity to, if you have a plan and you have action steps to making that plan happen, it can happen. But I don't necessarily think that just visualizing or believing something can manifest a certain reality, at least not separate from other spiritual forces that are at play. So I don't think that humans can manifest realities on their own. Ace.
So my question for you is, what do you understand manifestation to be?
So the definition of manifestation is visualizing, believing, and acting.
Oh, that's
That's
the
yeah, that's
Webster
like that's
definition?
the Webster definition.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason why I ask is because I personally believe that manifestation, yeah, it includes those things for sure. That's not incorrect, but I would say that it's a lot more than that, than just that. And I think everybody has a different version of manifestation. Even us in this new age group, I think we all have different versions or different ways to go about manifestation. There's definitely like the standard manifestation that you could find online for the definition, right?
Okay.
But manifestation is a lot more than just sitting and meditating and visualizing and believing. It definitely is action for sure. But I think real manifestation is getting your vibration to the level where you're resonating, to where it's actually resonating at a frequency that it's attracting the same frequency. So have you ever, you know what sympathetic resonance is, right?
No.
So let's say we have a tuning forks and they're the same frequency, or they're tuned to the same frequency, right? You hit one, and just because of the sound of the one being hit, it's making the other one sympathetically resonate. So the way that manifestation actually works, in my opinion, is that your frequency or your vibration of where you are mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that is resonating at a certain frequency that is attracting the things that match it or sympathize with it. So let's say you are trying to manifest a job or more money. Yes, you need to believe it to be able to see it first, because your frequency needs to match the resonance of where that is before you can actually receive it. But a lot of things that, something that I run into a lot when I'm talking to people is that they love to claim that they're more realistic. But in reality, realism is just as much as you perceive real to be. And also, that's a self-limiting mindset, because if you're being realistic, you're automatically limiting your capability of reaching to that belief point, or reaching to that point of resonating at that frequency where you can attract the things that are similar to that.
Okay.
Just like you attract people who are similar to you, right? Just by being yourself.
Can I respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So firstly, I would say that reality is not something that I just perceive to be something. I believe in objective truth, objective reality. So in the same way that we're all sitting here in a black box, I would say that that's the objective truth for everybody right now in this moment. I don't think that's something that I'm just perceiving. My second question to you is, how do you measure a frequency?
I think so there's many different types of frequencies, right? If you look at the laws of physics, everything is vibrating, down to the atom, down to the molecule, and down to the subatomic particles that make up atoms. So everything is vibrating, everything is moving. With sound, you can measure frequency by getting a tuner, right?
Right, but how do you measure your own internal frequency aligning with some dream you have?
I don't know if you can necessarily physically measure it, because that's one of those things that are like intangible. So there's things that exist in this realm that you can't actually measure, but you can perceive and you can experience. So there's quantitative things, like what science studies and what you can observe, and then there's qualitative things.
Yeah.
So the internal experience of my dreams is qualitative, right?
Right.
And you can measure my brainwaves with what is it called, an EKG or something like that? You can measure my brainwaves, so maybe that's one way of measuring it, right? But at the end of the day, what happened in my dream was a qualitative experience that I can tell you what happened in my dream, right? And then you can write it down and you can measure that.
Yeah.
But there's just many different ways of measuring.
I would say that's kind of curious, because to say that it's qualitative and not quantitative and it's immeasurable, while also using a ton of scientific jargon to quantify what this is, what frequencies are, I think that's a little incoherent.
Okay.
I don't know if you've spent any time looking at like scientific journals talking about frequencies and biannual beats. I'm going to get into this a little later too. But most scientists say that there's no way to measure frequencies having any kind of healing or legitimate impact on somebody's life choices or the things that they attract to themselves. So I think a lot of this is pseudoscience. I truly do. I think a lot of it is kind of appropriating scientific language and jargon and kind of appeal to authority. So it sounds like it's a really scientific thing, but if you were to talk to an actual scientist, they would disagree with the way that you're describing vibrations, for instance.
Religion aside and everything aside, I think it all speaks to like the power of your mind. What you believe literally that dictates everything. So, like in the Bible, life and death is in the power of the tongue. If I believe what I'm going to speak is going to come true, is going to come true. So, whether you can manifest health and wellness, I think yes and no. If you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you cannot. And it's literally just that simple, the power of your mind. If I believe I'm going to go out there, buy a scratch off on $1 million wholeheartedly, subconsciously, and everything, I can go out there and get that $1 million just that easy. That's why there's such an attack on the mind, because that literally dictates everything. And not even consciously, subconsciously, because subconscious controls 90% of what we do every day. Yeah. It's like habit almost, autopilot almost. So with that, if you get your subconscious in line, everything is lined toward this one belief, I for sure can manifest health and wellness. No problem.
So I feel like we're so close in our perspectives, because 100%, like, the mind is powerful, and I believe that the enemy comes against our minds, and he tries very hardly to put thoughts into our brains that are negative, because if we meditate on those negative thoughts, it's a lot easier to take action on those negative thoughts. But I would say that's the distinction, is that action is required. It's not just something that we can think. So for instance, like, there are many people who have believed that they're going to win the lottery, and they end up gambling away their life savings because they don't actually win the lottery. So that would be my question, like, how would you be able to account for the things that people do believe are going to happen, and they take the action steps for those things to happen, and they still don't happen?
That's the distinction between the conscious and the subconscious.
Okay.
Consciously, I could believe this, but if 90% of the rest of my body, the subconscious, is not believing that, then it's not going to come to pass. Like, that's why that's why they say shadow work and healing and trauma and go through all of this, because you got to clean that subconscious out before you can speak anything into existence.
Yeah.
You don't even have to use the word manifest. Speak it into existence. Think it into existence. That's why even when God says, if you thought the thought, is just like committing a sin, because it's really that powerful. Your mind is that powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, it goes down to the subconscious. So people can believe, oh yes, this.
So
but
what
is
if
that
somebody,
subconscious saying?
What if somebody has done all the subconscious work? You would just say that they haven't, if they're not able to
Exactly.
achieve what they
if
want?
it's not coming to pass,
That's not fair.
There's a blockage somewhere. Somewhere you missed something. There's
not
a
fair.
blockage.
So I believe, well, when I looked up the word manifest, I used the definition to show or display, and that's a verb to me. That requires an action. So faith without works is dead. I feel like, and a lot of spirituality, oftentimes when people do, let's say, spell work, or they're manifesting, it's a very set it and forget it, like that's going to happen. But no, it takes a lifestyle change and behaviors and like everyday work on yourself to master yourself to be where you want to be. It's never going to be, oh, I can only speak for myself here, but it takes work. And I think one thing I really enjoy about being spiritual is that I take on that work. I manifest what I want in my lifestyle by doing things every single day to get me closer to where I want to be. And in doing that, I'm embodying the energy that I'm manifesting. And I'm holding that in my heart and my focus. And that gets me there. That gets me there every step of the way.
How is that different than setting a goal? For someone who doesn't practice manifestation, how is that different than setting a goal?
I think it's the same. It could be very much be the same. It's whatever you want it to be. Like for me, I can only speak personally.
Yeah.
When I set a goal, it's very much like when I'm manifesting something. And oftentimes I can't even think of the last time that I manifested something, because I feel like if you're really in alignment with yourself, you see the things that you want to manifest or you want in your life every day. You can see it in the small and in the big. And as long as you keep that in your heart, that's the peace. That's the manifestation. Like, I feel like a lot of people, especially when they die, they have so many regrets, so many things that they want to do that they didn't get to do. But you can skip all of that and just live in the energy of what you want to do with action. It's really not
just something you say and it's going to happen.
You said something about spell casting. Can you elaborate more? Like, what is the spiritual part of manifesting? Because what you guys are describing to me is just setting a goal and working toward achieving that goal. So what's the spiritual part of manifestation? What makes this view distinct from any other person who's setting a goal and trying to achieve it?
So I would say that the spiritual part of manifestation is the self-work part, right? Because you can set a goal and you can make a list for how you're going to achieve that goal. But a lot of times those are very physical things. And I think with manifestation, you may have to address the fear, the anxiety, the doubt. And I want to go back to when you talked about being in this black box, we're all here, like that's a relative reality, right? Like we can all connect to
Objective,
that, or
yeah.
objective reality. But I think I had to first believe that I was capable of being in this room and that I was worthy of being in this room. And I would say that somebody who sets a goal may already believe that. So they don't have that hesitation. They can just go ahead and jump at that thing because maybe their internal network is already saying, well, of course I deserve this thing. I want this thing. Whereas like somebody who may be more drawn to manifestation, maybe they realize that they want this thing, but they have so much inner doubt and fear that I don't think I'm really supposed to be here. I feel like I'm going to get in this room, I'm going to fumble. So they make all these excuses. They find all these reasons why they can't be in this room. And like, I'll use myself, for example, I'm sick. So I was like, I'm going to get on the plane, it's going to hurt. I feel like I should just stay home. I'm thinking about all these things of why I should stay home. But really deep down, I know that if I didn't come here today, I would regret it forever. But if I let my fear win, I'm missing out on this thing that I really, really want to do. And I think that's where manifestation comes in, is you have to sit down, whatever you believe in, that's what you go and you pray to, you address that fear that way. That's why I say the spirituality comes into manifestation, because it does start in the mind, not in the action.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, I mean, it sounds like manifestation is just a rebranding of people taking care of themselves, their mental health, and then setting goals. So like a person who's going to therapy to address internal trauma or childhood wounds, and then they're able to succeed in their career because they're addressing those things. So I would say that that's still like, I would say that that doesn't belong to the new age. I would say that because we have God's thumbprint on us, we all have the desire to work through the things that are toxic in our souls, and we all have the desire to get that crap out of us so that we can live lives that are pleasing to me, pleasing to the Lord.
All I was trying to say when I was explaining what I was explaining earlier was that I was just basically trying to say you have to be there mentally before you can be there physically. So if you want to more easily manifest things in your life or more easily achieve your goals, you have to bring yourself mentally there, because in reality this is a physical realm, but it's built off of a non-physical essence, right? So it's all mental. It's a mental mind. Like, we live in God's mind because we are God's creation. So if everything is mental, then it starts mentally, and then it can go into the physical. But if you're not there mentally, like she was saying, if you're not there mentally, then it's going to be way harder to get there physically, because you're going to make all these excuses and you're not going to be able to believe that you deserve to be there.
I wanted to address what you said, because we were talking about how the definitions are just basically setting goals or whatever. And I feel like the good thing about spirituality for me personally is it can be that simple. Like I do agree, like a lot of people put and appropriate words in spirituality, and it's such a personal thing. So yeah, it does sound like, oh, you got to do all of this. I'm not going to say what I personally do, but it can be simple as just believing and working on it every day. Or you could be chanting, you could be doing all kinds of stuff, you know? It's a sliding scale, but
Can
it
you
can
negatively manifest something?
Yes, that's the thing. Manifestation is not always good. It's not always goals. Like, that's the thing. Like you said, oh, they said they believe they're gonna win the lottery. Why didn't they win the lottery?
Yeah.
Can
I share a personal experience?
Go ahead.
So from the time that I was 8 years old, I started struggling very badly with intrusive thoughts, onset OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. At 8 years old, I was having a hard time sleeping at night because I would have intrusive thoughts that told me to hurt myself or people in my family. I would stay up all night sobbing and crying. I dealt with those intrusive thoughts probably until 2 or 3 years ago. I would say that God has healed me, and I'm continuing to heal from that. But everything in my mind, in my soul, in my will could have believed those thoughts because they were so strong. And so I'm not saying that there's not some power in manifestation, but what I am saying is that God is sovereign over all of our manifestations and all of the things that take place in our minds and our hearts and our wills. Because I'm a Christian and I love Jesus, my will and my soul is submitted to Jesus ultimately. And it doesn't matter how many intrusive thoughts I get, because he's sovereign, that reality is not going to manifest itself because he has his hand over my life. And I'm sure that you guys have experienced times where you feel like everything inside of you is negative and evil and demonic even, but God has kept you. God has kept you. And so I would say the sovereignty of God is above our own will and our own emotions. When you're not submitted to Christ, you know, your will can get you in trouble. It can get you hurt. But because I'm submitted to Christ, even my thoughts, even the darkest parts of me are submitted to the sovereign will of God.
I agree with some of the things you said. I get where you're going. I do believe God, like, final say, but also sometimes it's in God's will for that negative thing to happen. And it's not even negative. I'm just perceiving it as that. So it can really go anyway. Manifestation can go anyway.
Yeah.
You can manifestate your worst nightmares or your biggest dreams.
Yeah. I believe in good and evil, and I believe that God does not want evil to happen. Yeah. You cannot find identity in astrology, the Enneagram, Chinese zodiacs, personality tests, etc. So the prompt is, you cannot find identity in astrology, the Enneagram, Chinese zodiacs, any other personality test, you name it. I picked this prompt because I believe that astrology specifically, I kind of believe it's a scam. I think that it is indicative on human nature. It says things to you that feel unique, but actually kind of apply to everyone, but it feels distinct enough that it's for you. And then also scientifically, I don't think it makes sense. But yeah, I'll just say that for my opening.
I think that it could apply to everyone. I think that some people could resonate with astrology and its descriptions, and some people can't. Also with astrology, I read natal charts, so it's like each placement focuses on at least one aspect or one trait. It's not, and then that's up to the interpreter that's reading a chart to kind of conjoin everything together and create a reading.
Okay.
I would not disagree with you on that. The reason why is because I don't think you are supposed to find your identity in things like that. I mean, the concept of identity in general is elusive, because your identity is something that you accrue over time since you're born. So identity is always changing, and it's changing with your experiences and your thoughts and your beliefs, and you know how you consider yourself in conjunction to other people or whatever, what groups you're a part of, right? As far as astrology, I'm like half in, half out. Like, I've seen the patterns, right? Like, I see pattern recognition. And when I read my chart, it resonates with me personally. Certain things don't resonate, right? So, and the reason why I'm also skeptical of it is because I don't know exactly what scientifically, like, would be proving, how science would prove astrology. The only thing I could really postulate would be, like, the energies that are resonating from the placements of the planet when you're born or whatever. But like, that's the only thing I could really think of. As for Enneagram though, I'm really nerdy about Enneagram. I think Enneagram is I know I did some research about it. I guess it's has links to esotericism from the past, right? I actually didn't know that before. I was just having fun with it as like a personality typing thing.
Yeah.
And you know, not everybody lives on a upon a gradient, right? So I don't think that these personality typings can really account for all of the value points that exist upon the gradient of human identity, right? But I do, however, think that you can look at it as a pattern recognition analysis. So, for example, I don't know if you know anything about Enneagram, but I'm a type 4 with a 5 wing. And so type 4 is individualist. They basically say like the basic fear and the basic, motivation, and then the wings are kind of like what you're also like. So I don't know if you've looked into it, but I just think those things are fun. Like they're just fun, like, oh, let's see if I resonate with this. But I don't know if they're like provable in any scientific sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say that they're fun and they're interesting to most people because they do appeal to your identity. And so to have something that tells you who you are or why you behave a certain way kind of speaks to that inner need to be validated and affirmed by God, I would say. With astrology specifically, if you guys are familiar with the phenomena of axial precession, have you heard about that? Okay, so basically it's that the earth spins slowly over time. And so because the earth spins slowly over time, constellations are vastly in a different placement than they were even 2,000 years ago. So people who say they are in one birth chart according to a map from 2,000 years ago would be in a completely different one today. So that's why the science doesn't make sense. Now, the science part that does make sense to me is the appeal to people's need to be affirmed. So people who run these astrology websites and horoscope websites, you know, like even there are mediums that really feel like they're tapped in, and then there are mediums that are scammers. And so I feel like a big portion of the astrological world is a lot of scammers who bank off of the fact that human beings want identity. And so they say things to them that feel distinct, but really are not unique. They say things like, you keep your cool in most environments, but if somebody triggers the activist in you, then you stand up because you fight for justice. Most of us would agree with a statement like that, but if you're reading that in the isolation of your bedroom, you'd be like, wow, this thing gets me. And so I just think that needs to be called out.
I did want to affirm what you were saying about people who really feel like they're doing something, because again, it goes back to like how feelings are a force. But I would think that astrology and zodiac are as valid as science, because science is based in the mind, and I don't personally worship my mind. I don't worship science. I try not to worship my identity, but I do think that it's a means and a tool to understanding, and that it is subject to change. And I'm careful with astrology because there's a difference between zodiac and astrology. Zodiac is kind of more fixed, whereas astrology are predictions into the future. And that's when you get into like unseen forces, which isn't always bad. Like there are unseen forces that are believers, but a lot of them are not. They're not in our best interest, right? Like think about angels, for instance. So my thing is just like, for instance, Yusuf or Joseph, he had a dream. He saw 11 stars, the sun, the moon, the sky. Like these are valid tools that have been used throughout time to be able to not only see where we're at now, but where we're going. And we just have to be careful with like grounding ourselves again in the exoteric as well as the esoteric, because people have lost their minds with that type of stuff.
So you talked about hermeneutics a bit in the last prompt. And hermeneutics, you would know, being a seminary student, is a very important tool in understanding the Bible. And so when you apply a proper hermeneutic to Joseph in his dreams, you would see that he has a prophetic gifting. It's not a medium gifting. It's not an astrological gifting. It's a gift directly from the Lord. And it's not Joseph coming up with these dreams or visions himself. They're dreams that the Lord is giving him for the Lord's glory, to accomplish the Lord's glory, to bring the people of Israel to Egypt. So I just want to be careful. What I want to be careful with is using too much Bible when we're not actually interpreting it in the way that the writers of the book
I'll use the
meant
Quran.
for us.
Yeah, and the Quran is mentioned
it.
multiple times. Nejum is a star. There's multiple words for stars in the Quran. And in many of the texts, if not all of them, and every single spirituality has an inner dimension. So for Judaism, it's Kabbalah. For Islam, it's like Ihsan or Sufism. There's Nirvana, which also means Nur Fana, the light of annihilation, when you lose your ego or yourself, right? Like Nur Fana literally means light of Fana or light of annihilation. But like the point is that it's not like things are not in isolated boxes. That's what the Enlightenment era would have us think. It wants to canonize religion. It wants to canonize the truth, because religion is not really a thing. It's more of something created for the truth. And like it wants to make it just one time, but the reality is these people were sent for all times, and they're still among us today. They're friends.
Yeah, and
the
Bible speaks very specifically about divination. That's not something that happened post-Enlightenment. That happened 2,000 plus years ago.
But the worship of reason, that's what it advocated for.
No, the Bible does not advocate for the worship of reason. Maybe man advocates for the worship of reason. The Bible advocates for the worship of God. And it actually tells us to submit our own reason, right? Proverbs 3:5, lean not on your own understanding, but on every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God. So it actually tells us to submit our own will and our own reasoning to God. See, the issue, I believe, with New Ageism and astrology and Enneagram is it tries to posture the human as God. It tries to posture our will and our emotions and our desires and our manifestations as God to God rather than submitting to him. Another point I want to bring up too, you talked about the Enneagram, Ace, and you talked about demonology. There is demonology associated with the Enneagram and with astrology. Actually, with the Enneagram, the guy who brought the Enneagram into modern existence got the 8 types through automatic writing. So through spiritual trance-like state, writing, not being there fully consciously. With astrology goes back to 3 BCE Mesopotamia, Babylonian Empire, and they believed in demons that roamed between heaven and hell. Okay, also Greek astrology and mythology, there's demonology there. When you think about Hinduism, which New Ageism appropriates much of its traditions and values from. There's thousands upon thousands of demon gods just within Hinduism. Specifically, there are 2 planetary nodes that rule astrology in Hinduism. Their names are Rahu and Ketu, I believe. And they represent things like insatiable desire and wastefulness and impulsivity, etc. So there are demons associated with this practice. And I bring up demonology because a lot of the times when we're talking with Christians or when I've been in spaces like this, it's like, oh, the Christians always want to talk about the devil. The Christians are always bringing the demons up. Like, who says the devil is bad? Well, I bring this up to say something that is demonic is not like a Christian bigoted thing. It's actually in the history of New Ageism to affirm demonology and to assess the fact that there are dark spiritual forces. There are demons in this world. There are demons that hate Jesus and tremble at his name. And this has been recorded throughout history. And so I would just say, like, be careful with this stuff.
I feel like you're using the word New Ageism as like another term like Christianity or Catholicism. And I feel like you're grouping New Ageism as like a new religion. It's not. New Ageism is just a term to describe personal spirituality that all of us have. Spirituality is just a personal relationship with what you call God, right? It's all the same God.
No.
I'm telling you, it's one thing. We're all one thing.
No, I rebuke that, actually.
Okay.
So
We're all
let me address your claim. So no, I know that New Ageism is not a new religion. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that as an umbrella term to define people who practice spirituality. It's hard to nail down New Ageism because you guys don't have like a core foundational belief in the same way that Christians do, right? But there are some similarities. There's things like believing that creation is God. There's things like believing you yourself are God. There's things like putting your mind, will, reason, and emotions over other people's. So those are the things that I feel like make New Ageism congruent and why I address it the way I do.
I mean, anybody could have true dreams, though.
Of course, anyone can have
Just
a true dream, right?
Just like the prophets. I mean, so where do you draw the line? Like, if that's what prophets are, they prophesize. Anybody can prophesize.
So I would say that based on what the person does with the dream or the vision that the Lord has given to them. I also believe that Satan is the prince of the air. So I believe that Satan can also give people certain gifts, but he uses them to will evil into the world. And so I would draw the line again between who do you worship? If you're aligned with astrology and Enneagrams and all these other things that are aligned with demonology, as we just talked about, then I would say you're worshiping a demonic figure. And so whatever gifts you're receiving from that demonic figure are bad.
Yes, going back to the prompt, it was what was the prompt again? Can you remind me?
You cannot find identity in astrology, the Enneagram, or Chinese zodiac.
Yeah, and I would honestly agree with that. You're not supposed to find your identity in like a system. For me personally, like that's not what I would do, but I will say there's pattern recognition, like, you know, when you look into these things, and it's there if you want to find it. If you're looking for it, you're going to find it. And also there's so many different kinds of astrologies or zodiacs. Like you have Eastern astrology, Vedic astrology, which you're a different sign in than you are in Western astrology. And then there's Hellenistic, and then there's Babylonian. There's so many different kinds of astrologies. And me being spiritual, I like to think of God, like the source, spirit, whatever you want to say, as infinite. And we live in this solar system, but there's more to that. And I will never limit myself or my identity to just what someone says about this solar system. I don't derive my identity from, well, I will say I'm a Sagittarius, you know, I'm outgoing, you know, like all that stuff tracks, but so do everything else like tracks if I find it.
Yeah.
So I think it's really almost cultish to a degree. I'm not saying that there's not a science or anything to that, because there is. They've done it I can't tell you about it. But there's something to that, definitely. But I don't think it's smart or intelligent as a spiritual person to just derive your identity off of something that somebody else is telling you about yourself. You have to intuit with yourself and learn about yourself,
Yeah.
master yourself. That's for anyone.
Yeah, I would say the things that attract for most people is usually because, one, they're taking advantage of human nature, so the things that we all have in common. And then two, I would say because there's demons associated with it, when you come into alignment with a certain zodiac, you're probably representing or replicating the personality type of whatever that demon is. And so that's why so many people who are under the same zodiac act the same way or behave the same way, because they're in alignment with the entity associated with
Yeah,
it.
it's permission slips. I feel like if you want to act like a Sagittarius acts or anything, you're going to be like, that's me, that's what I do. And you're going to justify your actions and the way you live your life based off of that. But we're so complex and like, yeah, I just wouldn't lend myself to it personally, but take what you need and go.
Exactly. I think that's the beautiful thing of free will. Like, no, everybody doesn't have to succumb to the demonology aspect of astrology. This young lady right here said, I'm in between worlds. I don't like astrology. I don't like zodiacs, but I like the anagram. And it's like, you could take the meat and spit out the bones, in a sense.
I would say for spiritual people, that's a bit hard though, when there's spiritual realities associated with the things that you're practicing. That
Like,
seems incoherent.
I
to
wouldn't
ignore those things.
like normally this is like totally taboo to talk about because again it's experiential. Like everybody has their own stuff, but my thing is like in dark times like we are in right now. You think about the ocean. The further down you get into the ocean, the more the animals are able to provide their own light. So we have to be able to start providing our own light. We cannot just stick to the text and just keep it like in that box anymore, because there is a deeper reality to these texts that we're just sleeping on, and it's like a whole wealth. Think about how long it took for Joseph to actually actualize his prophecy, like pretty much all of them. And so we think about manifestations like poof, it's here, but we look at these patterns, again, the pattern recognition, the histories repeating themselves to really go deeper, not just in the text, but within our own selves, our own lives. So I would encourage you to pay attention to your dreams, to write down your dreams, maybe even think about zodiac. Me personally, I would not touch astrology though. Like I just don't mess with it. But that's my line. Like that's me.
Yeah, I don't think that you could distinguish those practices. And then I would say about Joseph too. Joseph is not manifesting an actualization or a prophecy. God gave him a prophecy ahead of time, and then the prophecy was worked out in God's timing. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
I have one more thing to say before our time is up. Before, when I was talking about how the God that you speak of is the same God that I speak of, and then you told me that you rebuked that.
Yeah.
I personally have an issue with how religions, especially Western religions, like Abrahamic religions.
Christianity isn't a Western religion. It originated
Abrahamic
in the Middle
religions,
East.
whatever.
Okay, don't call it Western.
Okay, my bad.
Go ahead.
Anyways, I just have an issue with how there's such a concept of separation where you guys tend to invite the idea of separation, that we are separate from God and that we have to look up to it, or that we are separate from each other, or that, you know, nature is separate from God. I don't subscribe to separation, because that to me is demonic, because hell is a separation from God. Sin means without. So sin is without God, right? So when you're saying that
Sin means to miss the mark.
Okay, we have different definitions.
No,
Either
that's
way.
the definition. Is
Either
to
way,
miss the mark. That is the Christian worldview.
That's
and Webster
from
definition.
your definition, but like
no, it's Christian,
okay,
right?
I'm speaking.
It's New Agers versus
Can you
Christians.
please let me speak?
So that's the definition.
But the idea that you think that we're speaking about something different just baffles me, because in my perspective, we're all trying to describe the same exact thing. We just have different semantics on how we describe it. But I think that religions create so much discourse between different religions, and they create separation, like, oh, if you're not on the in group, you're on the out group and you're going to hell. And I think that that separation is the exact leverage that human organizations needed to create fear so that they can control people through religion. I think that religion started as a way for people who believe the same thing to come together and have community. But I think through human corruption, being run by humans in the physical world, I think through human corruption, it has turned into more of a fear-mongering thing for control.
So notice how you said that you think what I'm saying about the separation between God and nature is demonic. When I said something was demonic, I referred to the history, right? There's demonology that's continually represented throughout the history of astrology and zodiacs and New Ageism and Hinduism, etc. So it's not a personal belief. It's that you can observe, even within these cultures, they're acknowledging the demonology that's represented in it. You can say that that's demonic, that's fine. That obviously would be my hope for you not to believe that, because I believe that Satan is actually the reason that we're all disconnected. If you're familiar with the story of the fall in Genesis 3, right, so Satan came into the world and he introduced actually a false light, which I believe New Age is actually after, this false light, this false sense of entitlement, this false sense of enlightenment, this false sense of trying to be your own gods. This is the original sin in the garden. And that is what has separated us. And there's only one thing that unifies us, and that's Jesus Christ.
I could literally say the same thing about your opinions and beliefs. I could say that you're misled and that what you believe is false and that that's a false light. Because in my knowledge of religion, I've seen so much bloodshed over the idea that we're talking about this different things. But the reality is that we're all trying to describe the same thing, and I just don't understand why people who subscribe to organized religion and organized belief systems, why they can't just see through that veil of like, listen, we're all trying to reach the same thing. We're all trying to understand and have a connection with the same source because we all come from the same source at the end of the day. But I just think that there's so much negativity, and my bad, not demonic, it's evil. It's evil. Separation is evil because separation from God is where evil lives. So when I say that we're talking about the same God, we're talking about the one God, the all-encompassing. But when you say that New Ageism is like misled or following the false light, it's like, what if my New Age beliefs are leading me to the same exact place and peace that your beliefs are?
They're not. They're not.
How do you
because,
know that?
Because
You don't know me.
again, you're debating a Christian, right? So we have to acknowledge the Christian worldview, and the Christian worldview says that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light. It says that there is a God.
What did Jesus say?
It says that there is a God that demands to be worshipped in a specific way, and that this God does not want to be aligned with any other idol. It says that God hates idolatry. It also says God hates divination.
So God isn't evil, but he hates?
Sorcery. So I would just say that God is a righteous judge, because God is a righteous judge. He has both wrath and love inside of him. He is compassionate, but he's also wrathful, because he has to enact wrath on a world that is evil and wicked and broken. And he has standards, as he should, because he's the creator of everything. And one of his standards is that we do not practice idolatry. I would say that all of these things fall into the tenets of idolatry, and that they are spiritually dangerous, as we discussed with the demonology.
Jesus didn't teach us to worship Christianity. He taught us to worship the one who created it. So that means that two lefts can sometimes make a right.
No.
I have a bridge, I think. I think that Christians have every right to say to spiritual people that that's not my God, that's not what we believe, these are my terms, these are our semantics, it's different, what you're doing is not the same. Just like Hinduism, any other religion has that same right. It's okay that they're different. What's important is the bridges and how we're treating everyone. So if she's saying that, like, I would agree with you, like, sure, because that's true for you, that's true to Christ, and like what you believe and you follow, and what we believe and follow is personal. So it does sound like I can understand how when other people, let's say, appropriate your terms of Christianity or the Bible, I can see how that would be a little frustrating, because spirituality is a very personal thing, and we can syncretize from different religions or ideologies and intuit our own way. And sometimes our way of doing that is by using terms that already existed, because that's where the groundwork is, or the terms are, that already are there. So.
Wow, Kalia. So you just debated 20 different women on these really interesting topics. I would like now for you to choose one lady here that you would like to speak to one-on-one, and let us know why you're choosing whoever it is that you're choosing.
Okay, I'm choosing this person because it seemed like there may have been some parallel, but there's also the belief that they have in New Age practice. And so I wanted to get a little bit more clarity about their perspective and also how they distinguish the difference between God and themselves too. And the person I'm choosing is Farron.
Farron, come on down.
So my prompt is, I am the measurement, I am the science, and I am the study. My life is absolutely evidence of my journey. I don't need to study the studies. I don't need to read a book most of the time. Me living, just living and surrendering. I am the measurement. I'm the study. I'm it. I'm it.
Okay. So would you say that the things you do could be replicated by another person then?
Same actions, but the same effect because if they're not me, no. Only Farron can do what Farron does the way Farron does it.
Okay. So would you say that you care for the well-being and fruition of other people's lives?
I do from a human standpoint, but I know that God knows more than I do. So if he's deciding to put you through a lesson, put you through diseases, who am I to interfere with my human? Only God knows what to do with certain consequences and certain journeys. So I just try to stay in my own human journey, my own lane.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in the Christian worldview, Revelation 21:13 says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so there's incredible power in the fact that we have testimonies, we have journeys like you talked about. And so we get to share those journeys with other people in hopes that it sets them free, it gives them wisdom and insight about how to live their lives. And so what I would say about your worldview that's a bit confusing is that it's not standardized, right? It's just you get to decide, you're the measure. And so the issue with that is that human beings are flawed. And so your perspective of what something that's right one day could be completely wrong the next day. And it's something that can't be replicated either, which I find a little bit of a moral and ethical conundrum there, because I feel like if you live a good life, you want other people around you to live a good life too, and you want to be able to share some of the wisdom that you've lived so that they can live good lives too.
I want people to live the life they deserve.
Yeah.
I don't know what people deserve. I don't know what you've done. What are you sowing? What are you reaping? That's not my position as a human living her life to decide. And I hope I don't sound offensive, but I don't care who I confuse. I don't care who my journey confuses. As long as me and God are in tune, I can confuse the masses as long as my soul is in alignment with my journey and the Lord that I serve. So confusion we're all confused. We're all flawed, like you said. We can all miss the mark. God knows these things, though. So me missing for a human might not be missing for him because he already knew. I need to learn something by making that mistake. I need to learn something by going to that dark room. It's just me trying to stay as human as I can be and not talking as if I am God himself.
Yeah. So God himself tells us to love our neighbors as ourselves. And so I think the issue, again, with New Age and spirituality in general is it becomes this super me-centered thing where it's you just said, I don't care if I confuse people. I don't care if other people make it. I don't know what they deserve. But in the Christian worldview, it's we actually all know what we deserve. We deserve death. We deserve hell. The Bible says, for the wages of sin is death. But the gift of God through Jesus Christ is eternal life. And so we all deserve one thing, but because Christ paid the penalty, we get another thing. We get life. We get to live life abundantly. But the thing is, as a believer, I'm sharing that view with other people because I don't want other people to perish in their sin. I want other people to come to a knowledge of truth. And so I guess my question for the New Age is, why don't you guys have that same unction for people to come to a knowledge of truth? If it's all about love and other people and everybody just doing their own thing because I just want to love on them and I want to love on myself, why is there no unction to usher people into what you believe to be true? Why is there no standardization?
There is, but I can only meet you where you are. That's your perspective.
Yeah.
I'm not here to convince you otherwise. That's just your perspective. I believe New Age spiritual people believe in many ways to find one answer.
Yeah.
That's where it differentiates. Christians believe the Christian way will get you the Christian answers, the Christian way. Most of us New Age spiritual people believe that you can find answers multiple ways. So knowing that God knows everything and pretty much can connect with us in our different channels, I think most channels are valid as long as you know that you're getting the message from God. which
Yeah.
can be through this microphone. Your shirt could be I can find God in your shirt, my shoe, the mic. That's me personally. So I'm not here to convince or deny anybody. I'm just sharing my experience.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I would just say that I think that what separate, not even just from New Age, we've had the privilege of having conversations with Muslims and Mormons and scientists and atheists, and I think what distinguishes Christianity from all other religions is that desire to help our fellow man. And it's a knowing in the truth, not just the Christian way, but what we believe to be the ultimate truth. And because we believe that without a shadow of a doubt, because I believe without a shadow of a doubt in my bones that Jesus died for me and then he rose again on the third day and that he's coming back again, because I believe that and I've truly internalized that, there's nothing more that I could do but go and share with other people the glorious standard.
Yeah, those
and the
same people have
glorious
to receive
standard.
you. You can't determine if those same people receive you. That's a God thing.
Yeah.
It's not a me.
Right, but
you
we shouldn't
thing.
presume.
Like,
We shouldn't say no for people.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much accepting of people because I'm a person.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
bash. I don't. No, that's not the right way.
Yeah. But I mean, even
Seems like
with,
most Christians do that sometimes, though. Y'all bash, y'all debunk, y'all. No, that's not right, and you're going to hell the whole time. Neither one of you Christians are God Himself, and I don't like when Christians speak as if they are actually God. Only God knows what God knows, and I surrender to that.
Yeah.
That's what I surrender to.
Yeah.
Everything else is learning. I'll apply it. I'll learn and grow.
Yeah.
But,
I would say withholding what you believe to be true for you is wrong. It's not loving other people, because if you believe something to be true for yourself and you've seen the outcomes of it, but you're withholding it because you don't know what this person deserves or you don't know if they'll receive it, I would say that I would argue that that's actually playing God. You're presuming for this person that they're not going to be receptive to whatever you have to offer. Whereas the Christian worldview says, I'm not God, so I'm not going to withhold grace. I can't withhold grace because I'm not God. Instead, I'm going to be forthcoming with it. I will say, like, I get what you're saying about feeling like Christians are constantly bashing people or telling people that what they're doing is wrong. And I would just say, like, lovingly, the Christian is trying to grip people from hell's flame. Jude says, some people you snatch, okay, out of the hellfire. There are some people that you could be very kind and loving to, and there are some people that need to straight up hear, hey, you're in idolatry, you're in communion with demons, and you need deliverance, and Jesus loves you, and he's in desperate pursuit, and he's in desperate pursuit of you. So when we say things that are bold like that, it's not because we want to say it. That's actually very hard to say in a world that genuinely hates Christians. The world mocks Christians. No, the world mocks Christians. They mock our Bible. They mock our Jesus. We got gay Jesus superstar. So, like, to be bold about what right, I know, but I'm just saying, to be bold about what the text says is actually a very hard thing. And so to just give you a perspective of a Christian, when we're bold about what the text says, it's actually coming from a place of love and self-denial, because our flesh would rather have us quiet, muzzled, don't say anything that's going to offend anyone, don't set them off, they're going to hate you, they're going to make fun of you, they're going to go make a video about you. So when you see us being bold that way, I know it's hard to perceive as love, but it truly is.
For me, everything is love,
Yeah.
because that's how my system is set up to perceive everything. Everything's positive to me. If I can learn from it, it's positive.
Yeah.
I'm just not with the God. Like, it's just like, I'm not God. So how can I just be in you? No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Because I do not know, because I am not God.
Yeah.
We all have to surrender our journeys to God. However
Yeah.
that looks for you, that's for you.
Yeah.
If I decide to look over and say, hey, sis, we walking towards a light, that's my decision. But
Yeah.
if I want to focus and let God be God, ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
That can only be me. I can only sometimes handle my own. I'm a human being.
Right.
I have 2 dead parents. No kids, no
sorry.
siblings, and
Yeah.
I'm navigating LA as a dark-skinned woman sent from God. I have to focus on what
Yeah.
God promised me and me only. I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
I don't have the capacity sometimes. So
Yeah.
everybody surrender to God and keep going in God's light, whatever that means for you. Because you can feel when it's not God. You can feel it. We all go through things. We all go through sins. We all sin. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would just say, like, when Christians say things, it's because the scripture, the Bible, is our authority, right? So we're not saying it ourselves as God. We're saying it because God has left us with the written. inspired text. And so
That was written by man.
That's what we're
40
sharing.
times.
No, not
Rewritten by
not
man,
40
New
times.
Testament, Old Testament,
So are you?
your human experiences, your human experiences. And it all, in my opinion, is just trying to explain the power
Yeah,
of God. That's
yeah.
all. It's human.
Yes.
A human wrote the book.
Yeah, so
over
you-
and then over and this time in King James Version. Can you say confused?
Yeah, are you?
Because we're human,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Do you know how translations work for the Bible?
I know how translations work for the soul.
Okay.
I'm not
Okay,
here to do that.
so let me
I
just-
know
let
you
me
hear
just-
how you hear because that's how God
Yeah.
probably wanted you to receive
Yeah.
the way he wanted you to.
Yeah, so let me just clarify for the audience watching at home too. So we have Greek and Hebrew manuscripts that the Bible is translated over from. So when you have a translation like the King James or the ESV, they're going back to those manuscripts to translate the words. This is why there are things like the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Where you look at an Isaiah scroll and you look at the book of Isaiah, it doesn't matter if it's in the NIV, KJV, ESV, you're gonna see 90% accuracy because what was written has been sustained throughout time. We talk about scribes, we talk about creeds. We have people in history like Constantine who have less historical documentation than the Bible does, yet we believe their stories. So when we talk about the Bible, I just want to make it very clear, like the Bible is an archaeological phenomena that most people acknowledge and respect for that reason. So it's not just a piece of paper that was written by.
It's not, but it's
No.
also human experiences created by humans. It's undeniable.
Human
God didn't write.
experiences created
God
by
did
humans?
not write the Bible. It is used as a tool to find Him.
So it's
That's just how I
it's
feel.
God inspired. It's God inspired. So God Himself.
I didn't write it. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Honestly,
So
that's why I keep going back to I don't know.
I know.
because
You don't
I'm
have
not
to know.
God.
You don't
I
have to know. You don't have to know. But I'm just saying, if you're going to make claims, then I just have to clarify. It's God. The text is God inspired, and it was written.
Is it?
Yes, it is 100%. It's
can't
God
say
inspired,
that because I
God
don't know.
breathed,
I
and
didn't write
it's
it.
been sustained. So I would encourage you. Have you read through the Bible?
I have.
Okay, I would encourage
And
you
the
to.
Quran and other books.
Yes, I would
Being
encourage.
a person with a Muslim last name, a mother who died Christian, and a father who's Rastafarian. I've actually been intrigued
it
to
all.
read many books, and that's
Yeah.
where I find the commons.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Yes.
this sounds like what this book said.
Yeah.
Is this similar?
Yeah,
Are we
it's-
all trying
it's
to
'cause
describe this one God that we're arguing about through many channels?
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
It's because the serpent is shiesty.
yeah,
It's
we're
because
humans.
it's because Satan is deceptive.
It's because
And
humans
so-
are receptive and we all receive things differently. That's just,
and
we're humans.
we receive from Satan differently.
Did God make Satan too? According to the Bible, God made him too, right?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
He created Lucifer.
Okay.
Yes.
So it could be human
yes. So
to follow
Lucifer
Satan too.
Yeah, it could be human to follow Lucifer, but is that the right
God
thing to
made him
do?
too. I don't know because I'm not God.
Right. Okay.
didn't-
So
I don't
and that's
know,
the
'cause I'm
and
not
that's
God.
the issue with the New Age. Everything is
not an issue, it's
everything
reality.
is I don't know. There's no standard. There's no helping people cross the bridge to
That's
get into
your
light. And it's
perspective.
also very like self-consumed. Like
disagree.
even the life that you describe yourself having here in LA, it's self-consumed. It's alone. There's no community. There's
I
no
disagree.
standardization.
When you're walking in alignment, you'll find like minds. When you're walking the way
You
God
just said
directs
that
you
you
to,
do life
you
alone.
I
You
said
said-
I have to focus on what God promised me. But in that journey, I also said if I decide to look over
Yeah.
and say, hey, we walk on this journey together, it's my decision. It's
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to focus on yourself. And then there's other times to share the message.
Yeah.
But sometimes you got to receive the blessing to even connect with some people. I have to keep walking so that what I'm saying can physically make sense for some people. So again, I'm not God. I'm just here to walk my journey, and I feel like I'm listening to God every step of the way.
Yeah.
And when I get to a safe place like this, I can share, you know, how I think. But when I'm
Yeah.
out in the world, I'm in these Hollywood rooms, and I know how intricate it can get.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like a protective
It's,
mechanism.
it's God, mouth closed, studying. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. It's just me and God in certain rooms. So I don't know what other people hear. I just know what I hear.
My wrap up thought, there's a lot said. I would just say that, man, God desires for us to, one, have clarity about who He is, what He wants for us. And so He allows us to exist within community with a holy scripture, with a text, with other people filled with the Holy Spirit that can help to guide our path. And that's what you see with most Christians when they are being emboldened and they are sharing truths, because they want other people to come alongside the objective truth, the real truth. They want people to be saved. They want people to know Jesus Christ, the Lord of our souls. And I would say that New Age in a lot of ways to me sounds lonely, it sounds detached, and it sounds confusing just because there's no way. There's no one way. It's inconclusive, it's inconsistent, and it's immeasurable. And so I think what sets it apart from something like organized religion, which, so just so everybody knows,
How do you measure a blessing,
James
then?
1:26 and 1:26 through 27 says true religion is this, to take care of the widow and the orphan. So for everybody who has an anti-religious in their heart, listen, I'm religious because I care for the widow and the orphan, and I love Jesus Christ. So I would just say, yeah, like that's the measure. Jesus is the measure, truly. I'm not the measure, you're not the measure. Jesus is the metric by which we live, and because of his blood, we're able to be in alignment with him and share that truth with other people.
Okay, and to that, I'm gonna walk away probably more. I'm walking away with my same beliefs. I'm continue to walk on my path. In my opinion, I am the measurement. I am the experience. I am the study. If I decide to write my experiences down for somebody else to study, they can reference my studies in another debate. We all are a study. We all are walking science. You are the measurement. I can't measure a blessing. What's a blessing to you might not be a blessing to somebody. Is it big or small? I don't know. That's a God thing. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Hope I ain't leaving no sweat marks on the seat. I was sweating.
All right, Kalia, you debated 20 different people. This is really, really exciting, and I hope that you enjoyed it. What was that like for you to debate 4 versus 1?
Yeah. It was a little intimidating, but as soon as it started, I just felt the Holy Spirit empower me, which is so funny because I feel like that's what, all my friends and the people praying and interceding for me back home said. They were like, Kalia, like, you can stand in a pulpit, you could talk to 20 people. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's no different. It's literally no different. And so I had all the nerves coming in, but the second that people sat down to have a conversation, I was like, no, the Lord is going to have his way. And he did.
So you didn't feel intimidated by that?
No, not once we started.
That's great. Is there anything that anyone said that stood out to you, or something that was said that made you think twice?
Yes. Day specifically stood out to me. I thought about pulling her for the last conversation, but we had a lot more parallels and congruencies, so I wanted to push myself. But she seemed to have like a real understanding of the God of the Bible. And even when she talked about being like in a mental ward institution, and how she gravitated toward the Bible, and she came home and she got rid of all of her sage and she stopped practicing Sambalto, I think it's called. And she realized like I was using these things as a coping mechanism, not actually dealing with my soul being darkened. I thought that was just like incredible. I was not expecting a testimony from the other side, but that was really incredible to me.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wish you would have said during the debate that you didn't say?
Trying to think about my notes. I don't think so. I feel like I covered most of the bases. I would probably touch a little bit more on manifesting, being connected to a spiritual authority or a spiritual power. So a lot of the times, and I think I would push more about what manifesting is, because they were very like on the surface about manifestation, but it doesn't take much. It doesn't even take much looking through like Reddit forums to find that a lot of people are manifesting by casting love spells and manipulating people, and they use images and they eat grapes under the table on New Year's. So like there are these very strange spiritual practices associated with manifestation that I wish we had gotten into a little bit more. I don't know if the other side would have been comfortable sharing some of that. But because I know those under surface practices do exist, I know that it's a demonic practice. I think that Satan appropriates the kingdom of light. I think he takes things that God has instituted and he perverts them. And we don't just see this with stretching and yoga or mediums and psychics. We see it, literally throughout our world. Like God has ordered the world in such a way, and people take advantage of that and try to become their own gods through things like manifestation, through things like yoga, through things like tarot card readings. And so as she was talking, all I could think was, yeah, it makes sense that yoga helps kids calm down, because you're appropriating stretching. You're putting kids in a quiet space and they're stretching. It makes sense to me that that would chill them out. The same thing with frequencies. Yes, music is powerful. Worship is a powerful tool. But to say that there's a specific frequency that we have to tap in, then we're getting into witchcraft, then we're getting into divination, then we're getting into omens. And so, yeah, that's all I could think about was like, man, Satan is just a counterfeit. All he does is provide counterfeit options to what we know to be true and what God has instituted.
So why did you choose Farron for the one-on-one debate?
Yeah, so I chose Farron because in the first round, when she came down, she was talking about how when she sits at the beach, she thanks God for the beach. And that was distinct from everybody else on her side. And I was like thinking about that throughout, like, how are you different than these people? Because most of them are not willing to concede that there's a God above the beach. They think God is the water. They think God is the ocean. And so I kind of just had her on my mind the whole time. She kind of had like a bubbly, uppity personality too. So I was like, she would probably be fun to sit down and talk to. So yeah.
She definitely was sweet.
She was sweet.
Is there anyone that you didn't agree with, but you felt impressed by, maybe their knowledge or something about them?
I think I was impressed by some of the things that Ace shared. I think she was able to articulate herself well, and I was impressed by her ability to ask questions on the spot. I think that's very hard to do. So when we started talking about God's character and she's like, okay, so does God hate people? That was really engaging and cool because it's like, okay, now we can get to the nitty gritty of God's character and really get into the conversation. We didn't get to do that a ton, but I love it when people are able to kind of think on their feet and then the conversation is able to evolve in a really productive way like that.
Yeah, that's true. Do you have any final thoughts about your experience today with these women?
It was a great experience. I'm honored. I can't believe that God has chosen me, used me to do something like this. I think that the kingdom of darkness got a black eye today, and God is really faithful to use us. So yeah, I'm thankful. Thank you, Michelle, for having me on too.
You did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you at home for watching. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this conversation and anything that you want to add to it. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi guys, I'm Kalia.
And I'm Chinasa.
And we are Just Two Girls.
We are here to introduce ourselves in case you are not familiar with us. We've been featured on some Dr. Daff episodes.
Woo woo!
And as a result, we have decided to start a podcast.
Backed by popular demand.
Right. So if you guys are interested in learning more about apologetics, geeking out on the Bible, doing Bible trivia, please.
Sharing Bible thoughts, Bible nuggets.
That part.
Controversial takes.
Yes. If you guys are into that in any way, feel free to give us a follow. We can be found on YouTube at Just Two Girls Podcast.
Right.
We can also be found on Instagram at Just Two Girls, J2G. Yeah.
J2G. We'll get some J2G merch too at some point.
Absolutely. And then on a personal note, if you'd like to follow me, I can be found on Instagram. I'm doing better. Y'all pray for me at justagirl.dev. Look out for certain products and Bible study tools coming soon.
And you can follow me online at Kalia Honey, Kaleea. Honey just as it sounds. I'm on Instagram, YouTube. My husband and I also do a joint podcast, We the Honey. So if you're interested in hearing apologetics, Bible studies, different kinds of things that have to do with faith and family, go ahead and follow me there too at Kalia Honey.
Alrighty.
Bye guys.